It's Bonk to the future with an all-new Bonk.
As Bonk Cyborg, you will battle King Gruul's Earth invaders, but this time you have more than just a hard head. Discover hidden powers beneath those sunglasses and the lightning bolt on your forehead. Happy bonking!
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Ultimate Turbografx 16 review here on Player 1 Start. In today's video, we are going to start moving through the shooter games for the platform, having already taken a look at the action platform games and the launch and early game titles. I think the shooting/shoot-'em-up genre really evolved with the 16-bit gaming era. The games I've already showcased include games such as Blazing Lasers, Galaga 90, and one of my personal favorite shooters, R-Type. And although the Turbografx 16 provides many shoot-'em-up games that are actually very good, it pales in comparison to the number released for the PC Engine, as this genre was very popular in Japan. And even though this game had a significant following in the United States, there were not very many games that were ported over due to the fact that they were considered to be not as popular with the Western gaming market. And that is why, even though these titles are much appreciated today, because these didn't necessarily fly off a store's shelves back in the day, these titles have become rare. And because they are very sought after, I do not have very many in my collection due to the extreme price of these titles. However, again, thanks to the power of the EverDrive, I'm going to be able to focus on the majority of shooter titles released for the Turbografx 16. Just like in my previous videos, we're not going to be able to visit every single one of these titles, but I am going to show the majority of them and dive into a few of them. So let's go ahead and take a look. The first one I'll start with is Aero Zonk. This is a side-scrolling shooter game released for the Turbografx 16 in 1992. Aero Zonk is a bit of a strange case because this was an attempt to update the Turbografx 16's image by reimagining Bonk into a character called Zonk. Taking a look at the design of the character, he definitely has more of a punk influence. These changes were most likely inspired by the success of Sonic the Hedgehog pushing Sega's hardware around the same time. This game was again developed by the Red Company, the original creators of the Bonk series, and they were also, by now, known for their Gates of Thunder series. This game also features the main antagonist from the Bonk series, King Gruul, along with many other enemies from the series. Instead of taking place in the distant past, this game takes place in the distant future. Across 5 levels, the gameplay centers around the effective use of shooting and bombing to complete a stage. At the start, the player can pick a companion character to team up with. However, the player can choose to limit the use of designated companion characters for each level, or opt out of using them altogether. Each companion character or friend can only be used once. This game takes on a distinct visual style that is sometimes called a cute-em-up. Another such example could be Fantasy Zone that was released by Sega. In the game, Zonk starts each stage alone and with no power-ups. He must collect 8 smiley faces, the 8th of which will appear in the form of giant sunglasses, in order to get his friend to join him. The companion initially acts as a Gradius-style support which follows Zonk, shooting projectiles. If the player collects another 8 smiley faces, Zonk and the friends will merge into a hybrid form, granting a new attack and 20 seconds of invulnerability. Once your invulnerability expires, if you're hit, you will return to normal form, and your friend will leave, though you'll still have the same power-up you had before changing into hybrid form. Overall, I found this game to be a pleasant experience. Although I was playing this on the Sweet, which is the easiest difficulty, choosing not to go for Spicy or Bitter. The visuals are nice and colorful, and the sounds and music accompany the game very well. And although I enjoyed this game, I am not going to recommend it to collect for everyone, mainly due to the fact that this game starts out in the triple digits and goes up from there to collect for original hardware. This game received average to positive reviews when it was released, scoring around 8 out of 10, and Electronic Gaming Monthly in 1992 awarded it the best Turbografx game of that year. If you can find this game for a decent price, or you are a fan of this genre and era in the 16-bit shooter style, I would definitely recommend giving this one a try. Aero Busters was released for the Turbografx 16, being a port of a Japanese arcade game known as Aero Busters. This game is a horizontally scrolling shoot-'em-up game, where players choose between one of 2 blaster fighters through 6 scrolling stages. The blaster fighters can equip one of 7 weapons, split between shooting guns and missiles. One most welcome power-up is the fact that you can get a border item which surrounds the front of the ship, keeping it from crashing into foreground objects. The only other collectibles are power-ups which increase the ship's standard shot power, and bonus points that appear in the form of $signs. From what I can see, this game is pretty faithful to the arcade version, albeit with some expected downgrades due to the fact that this console is not as powerful as the arcade hardware that this title was initially released on. Upon release, this game received average to positive reviews, stating that the game had an overall good art style and good sound effects and music, but some reviewers were especially critical of the lack of challenge. Overall, I did enjoy this title, as I am a fan of this genre, and I didn't really find that the lack of challenge was an issue for me, although I should note this is one of the few games I was able to beat through the first time playing. For the amount of money you have to spend on Turbografx 16 titles on original hardware, it may not provide you with as much playing time as you want out of this title. Still, I would recommend this title as one you will not be disappointed in on the Turbografx 16. Cybercore is a vertical shooting scroller that was released for the Turbografx 16 in 1990. In this game, set in the distant future, Earth is overrun with enormous cybernetic monsters known as hyper-insects. And basically your goal is to go through several stages collecting power-ups, eliminating enemies, defeating bosses, all without dying, until you can beat the game. Unlike Aero Blasters, this game does have a difficulty factor that is ramped up significantly starting with the second level, and it will provide you with a lot of challenge. The problem I have with this game is that I just don't care for what I'm doing on the screen. As far as shooters go, this is one that will blend into the background and doesn't really offer anything unique or specifically engaging, at least it didn't to me. One thing that I noticed that I think holds this game back from being truly great is the fact that sometimes, during the level, I have a hard time seeing what's on the screen because the backgrounds blend in to the foreground elements. This leads to some scenarios that I think are unfairly challenging because you just couldn't see what was going on the screen. Overall though, I feel that this game is very well put together. The graphics and sound are really nothing that stood out to me, but the controls are very responsive and everything was very intuitive enough to get me through this game without any tutorial on what to do. This game is on the cheaper end for collecting for the Turbografx, so I would definitely recommend it, but I'm not going to tell you that this is going to be the excellent standout game that makes this system shine above others. In the same vein as Cybercore, Dead Moon is a horizontally scrolling shooter that I think fits kind of the same description. This is another typical run-of-the-mill shooter. I do feel like the background elements in this one are a bit more discernible, so you can tell what is going on the screen a bit more easily than you could in Cybercore, but other than that, it is a typical run-of-the-mill shooter. This game did remind me of other shooters of this era such as Gradius and Darius, with enemies attacking the player's ship in sweeping patterns, and weapon power-ups that double as one-time shields. The ship can be upgraded with up to 3 of the same power-up, and any damage will reduce these power-ups by 1. Collecting additional power-ups of the same type will reward the player with screen-clearing bombs. Clearing all 6 levels unlocks a hard mode in which enemies can take twice as much damage. Overall, I think the presentation is very well done, and I did enjoy this game because it reminded me of others that I've played before that I liked. To paraphrase one of the reviews I read of this game, though Dead Moon isn't a memorable game by any stretch of the imagination, it admirably fits the bill when you're looking for a fun and simple shooter. Game reviewers, both modern and today, gave this game, I think, kind of a harsh rating for what it actually is, giving it around 5 or 6 out of 10. I would rank it around 7 out of 10, just to be fair, as even though this game has been done before, it still doesn't make it a bad game. Now, Deep Blue was a bit memorable to me because of its different concept when compared to other shooters of this era. You don't see too many underwater shooters. In this game, a hostile alien presence has descended upon the Earth's waters, and something leads to another and you have to go shoot things underwater. Other than that concept, Deep Blue is a basic horizontally scrolling shooter, where players collect power-ups and different weapons to fight various enemies. The screen can scale up and down to allow more vertical space, which was a common trick at the time for arcade ports of vertical shooters to fit on a smaller monitor. However, as far as I know, this game is exclusive to the Turbografx and PC engine, and it was not released in arcades. Although this game does have a unique concept, I have to say it is not one of my favorite shooters that I played on this platform. While the visual style is unique for the fact that you're not in space or in the sky, but underwater, it really wore off on me very quickly, and what I was left with was a shooter that didn't hold my interest. Gamers and critics alike met this game with lukewarm reviews. I commonly saw scores around 3 out of 10 to 5 out of 10, and sadly I agree that those are accurate reviews. This is on the cheaper end for the Turbografx 16, but it's still an investment to collect for it, so for that reason I would not necessarily recommend this title unless you're going for a complete collection. Galaga 90 started out its life as Galaga 88 in the arcades. This game serves as both an upgrade and a sequel to the original, which at the time this game was made would have been 7 years prior. As with the original Galaga, the game consists of levels of space bugs swarming around in set patterns before settling into a formation. In between screens is a vertical scrolling stage where asteroids, exploding balloon-like creatures, and swarms of baby aliens are destroyed before the attack wave starts. But to say the truth, this was lost on me because it takes a few levels for you to get there. I was actually wondering why there would have been a port of Galaga that not only got made to the PC Engine, but also ported over to the Turbografx, as I would have thought by the time this game was released, the relevance of Galaga would have been long lost on the gaming audience this was intended for. However, with these upgrades, this actually makes it a very fun version of Galaga for me to go back and play. Galaga is one of my favorite arcade games of this time period, and I feel that this game adds some necessary upgrades to keep the formula from getting stale. While overall I still feel that it is strange that they have ported Galaga at this time period, I do feel this game is worth a try, especially if you're a fan of this genre and the series. Now here's a shooter game that I enjoyed much more. Magical Chase is a side-scrolling shooter video game developed by Quest and released for the PC Engine in Japan in 1991, making its way to the Turbografx in 1993. Again, this game does remind me of a Gradius-style shooter. There are a total of 6 levels, which can be played on normal and hard difficulty settings, but if you play on easy, you can only play the first 3 levels. As enemies are destroyed, they leave behind different colored gemstones, which serve as the game's currency. Twice during each level, a shop appears, in the style of Fantasy Zone, where power-ups, health, and extra lives can be purchased. Touching obstacles, including the ground, does not kill the player, but it does slow your progress. If a player gets trapped behind an object on the left-hand side of the screen, scrolling damage will occur. Each stage is presented with the name of the mid-boss encountered, and keeping with the magic theme, is titled as a magical seal. Each level has a mid-boss and an end-boss. This game was developed by the team that would eventually go on to do Ogre Battle, Tactics Ogre, and Final Fantasy Tactics. This game received mostly positive reviews upon its release, and its reputation has only grown since then. However, if you are seeking an original copy of this game, it's going to run you thousands of dollars. And no game released for a home console will ever be worth that to me, so I definitely cannot recommend this on original hardware. Sadly, this game is hard to find on other platforms. It was released on Windows PCs in 1998 and the Game Boy Color in 2000, but those were exclusive to Japan. Even if you try to get the PC Engine version of this game, it's still going to cost you hundreds of dollars. So even though I did enjoy this game, I cannot recommend getting it on original hardware. One more thing I will note about this game, though, is just how technically impressive it is that this is running on the PC Engine. Keeping in mind that in 1993, there were very few games that would be released before the system would be discontinued. And that's very sad because this game is evidence of the games that could have been released on this platform to keep it more relevant before the next generation would push graphics beyond this. If you like this video and you'd like to help out with future projects on this channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Also, if you enjoy the content of this channel, please remember to click on this subscribe button. Again, I want to thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.